All right, great. So I'll introduce myself again. Hi, I'm Dr. Cynthia Clark. I'm an acupuncture physician and applied clinical nutritionist. I'm the creator of Energy Evolution, and I'm the president of Longevity Wellness, and this is the Longevity Wellness and Healing Process. And you're all here today to learn about thyroids and probably energy, right? Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here. I'll have a quick check-in. So by show of hands, how many of you know that America has 80% of the world's thyroid problems? Nobody. You didn't know that. How many of you know that 80% of those are autoimmune conditions? Okay. So now we're oriented. Yeah, there's some interesting information that we'll get to learn together today. Before I tell you about all this cool academic cerebral stuff that I love studying, may I tell you a little bit about myself and about why I study this? All right, so I started Chinese medicine school after having graduated from the technology industry when the bubble burst, and then from the home building industry when the recession hit. And so I had some time to do some self-reflection and think, what would I want to do? Welcome. What would I want to do no matter what the state of the economy was? What is the coolest thing that I can imagine do that would feed my passion no matter what? Janet, it's a pleasure to see you. And I sat and I thought long and hard, and I thought this whole work in miracles thing was pretty cool. I had studied martial arts, Chinese Shaolin Kung Fu, for about 10 years by that point. And so I had studied the meridians from a martial perspective, and I had learned how to use them for martial ways, and then I got really interested in what was actually going on in the body, and so I went and studied anatomy and thought that was really cool. And my Kung Fu teacher thought I was pretty weird, because here I was like in the anatomy class to understand when he said, let's not wear out the bursa sacs in our elbows. I went, what's a bursa sac? Like, no, I really want to know. So I got really interested in that, and when I got some time to reflect and think about what was most important to me, I thought work in miracles was the coolest thing I could imagine in life. So I went and I did that and I studied that, and I was passionately in love with it. I show up at school and it's like Hogwarts. There's all of these like cool herbs and neat stuff, and I get to see miracles every single day, and I'm so excited about this. But school, Chinese medicine school, is really intensive. It's 4 years year round, and it's in Chinese. It's really hard. My teachers were Chinese. They spoke English, but all of the herbs that we learned were in Chinese. We had exams every week or 2 weeks, so it was constant. You don't get summers off in this program, so it's year round. You get like a week off here and there. And during this time, I also got married, so there's a little bit more stress. The reason I'm sharing all of this is because when I graduated from school, so here I am, I'm passionately in love with what I do. I was married to my business partner. We were going to start this clinic together, and it's like, this is the best thing I can imagine, right? I'm getting to do the miracle stuff. It's the coolest thing I can imagine. And I walk out of school, I'm ready to start my practice, and I fall flat on my face. I was also a personal trainer when I was in school, so do you think I ate well? I did. Do you think I exercised well? I was attentive. I did. And yet, I'm doing all this stuff right, and I go to start my practice, and I'm just like a cupcake. It was horrible. I was having to take 2 naps a day, and coffee stopped working. It was terrible. And here I am, I'm full of this life and enthusiasm, but I'm like trapped in this body that is exhausted. And my libido was low too. I mean, it was terrible. I would get just like going for a short run, I was tuckered. I would like sit on the couch and be like, just gonna sit here for a while, it's fine. And I was really tired. And so like all of this was weird. It wasn't until I went to a training class that used applied kinesiology, muscle testing, and it evaluated some systems in my body in a different way than I'd ever experienced before, that we figured out what the nutritional deficiencies were, and for me at that time had to do with my thyroid. And I'm like, why do I feel 90 years old? Like, I'm doing everything that's so important to me, and yet I can't do any of these things. So that's why I care so much about thyroids. And I promised that I would share with you 3 hidden secrets, things that people often don't know affect their thyroid. So I'll share that with you. One of them I'll share with you, and I like to tell stories. So back when I was a personal trainer, when I was in Chinese medicine school, I had a gentleman in my class. So I taught a small group, which was super fun. And I had a gentleman in my class who, it was like my first day teaching this class, and I took over from somebody else. So I'm like nervous, you know, because like somebody else has been doing awesome with these people for all this time. And then I check in and I'm like, okay, we're gonna do the things. I'm trying to be my best. This guy leaves halfway through class. I was so, and I'm like, yeah, was it something I said? And he's like, oh no, honey, don't worry about it. I took this medication and I just get the muscle cramps now. And I said, first time I never heard of this. Wait, you're taking a medication that gives you muscle cramps? Oh no, I stopped taking that a couple years ago, but I still have like debilitating muscle cramps. He was a good worker outer. He wasn't a pansy. He was there and he was like giving it his all. And yet he had to leave class because his legs weren't working anymore. And I said, what medication was that? And he's like, oh, it's Lexapro. And I went, huh. And I listened. And I didn't know how to help him at the time, but my heart listened. And a few years later, when I was in practice myself, and I had a lovely lady come into my clinic who cleaned pools for a living. So there's one chemical that's used in pools that is very, very famous. What is it?
Chlorine.
Chlorine. Secret number one. Guess which chemical is toxic to your thyroid?
Chlorine.
You got it. You already knew it. Yeah, chlorine. Chlorine is one of the halogens. Technically chloride is, and it is toxic to the thyroid. And by the way, it is very prevalent in our water here in Sarasota, and it's a little bit even more complicated than that, because we also add in ammonia, and that creates, synergistically it creates a special type of molecule with the chlorine, and so it makes it even harder to get out of the water. So if you swim in chlorine pools, and or if you ever drink tap water, then you're being exposed to the chlorine. And also, if you take a shower in your house that has chlorine in it, you know how we do, ladies, you know how we do this lovely little steam bath? And we open all of our pores, and we put the beautiful good stuff on, and our skin goes, you know that thing that happens? Well, it happens the opposite way when we take a shower full of chlorine. Our pores open up, and it absorbs in both that chlorine and then the water itself. It's hot. I mean, I like a nice hot shower, and so there's the steam coming up. So instead of giving yourself the nice herbal steam bath, you're giving yourself a chlorine steam bath. Oops. Okay, so chlorine is toxic. So this lady comes into my clinic and she cleans pools for a living, and I'm like, ooh, well, that's a thing. And she mentions that she's got these muscle cramps that happen all the time, and I'm like, taking any medication? And she said, yes, I took, what's the name of the medication? There you go. And I said, oh, well, last I knew, there was the guy that took it 2 years before, and he was still having the muscle cramps. So I'm like, well, you're stuck. That's just awful. And I don't know, but I know we got this chlorine situation, and I know that in order to clear the body of this junk, she also had weight gain. I know that in order to clear the body, that one of the things we need to do is we need to get that chlorine out of the system. So we did a detoxification with her. And wouldn't you know it, those muscle cramps cleared up. You shouldn't have them anymore. And I went, ding, 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 ding. That's huge. The process that we used that cleared up her thyroid and detoxified her body, basically it made the machinery work the way it's supposed to, right? You know how you go and you get your car's oil changed periodically, or you should if you don't. In the same way that you change the oil on the car, you gotta degunk the junk from the liver, or it backs up and causes us problems. And those problems show up in a variety of different ways. They show up in brain fog, they show up in muscle cramps, they show up in all of the glunkiness. Okay, so you're all here for a reason, and that means that there's something that you have either that you're curious about, or maybe it's something that you're working on yourself. So I'd like to, before I move on, I want to make sure that I'm really serving you and that you're getting what you want out of this time together, now that you've heard a little bit about the kind of stuff that I work with. So what kind of stuff are you working with? How can I help you?
I want to do that.
I do also offer free 15-minute consults, and then you can also, here at this event I'm doing, I'm gifting $50 to anyone off of their initial consult. So the initial consult's just $200, but the gift of $50 helps inspire you to take action now. Because by the way, the junk that happens from the toxins, it makes us slower to action. It takes us longer to think through things because we're toxic. Okay, so what kind of stuff? What do you want to make sure that I talk about?
Two things. I have a daughter that was born without a thyroid gland.
Okay.
Has been on Thyroid. She's 26. Also takes Lexapro because she's anxiety depression. So well, there you go. I mean, she was on 2 other anxiety depression meds that she went off of herself. Actually, 'cause
I'm
insurance wasn't
so
paying.
glad you brought this up. Okay,
Yes.
so we have the thyroid anxiety
That's one of
depression
them.
combination. Yep.
Yeah, so that's one. And then I also have low thyroid, so I'm on generic form of thyroid.
Of Synthroid?
Levothyroxine.
Levothyroxine.
Yes.
Okay,
So.
got it.
And I have the brain fog, I have the tiredness, it's the same thing. I actually have an appointment on Tuesday with a doctor that's into health benefits and stuff too, so.
Got
I
it.
probably need to learn more about the detoxing.
Good.
So definitely I'm glad I'm here.
Excellent. Anybody else? All right, because I really want to talk about that stuff, so I'm just going to dive right in.
Keep going.
All right, so let's talk. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the biochemistry of what's going on. Hang with me for a moment. It's going to be cool because we're going to talk about superheroes. Okay, great. So it goes like this. The pituitary is what sends the signal to the thyroid, and the hypothalamus is what sends the signal to the pituitary. So it goes, the hypothalamus releases TRH, which is thyroid releasing hormone. Pituitary releases, what is the 3-letter acronym that we all know that's the test for the thyroid? What is it? TSH. What's it stand for? Thyroid stimulating hormone. Excellent. Great. The thyroid releases, then that's the signal to the thyroid, and it releases, does anybody know what the thyroid releases? T4. T4. Very good. Releases T4, and that goes to the liver and a little bit to the gut to get turned into T3 and free T3. And free T3 is what regulates our metabolism. All right, so a way to think about this is it's like, because I promised to talk about superheroes, so I will. It's like Clark Kent is your T4. And that is going, and he's going into the liver, which is the telephone booth, to get turned into Superman, which is T3. So what the standard approach is okay, we got a problem with the thyroid, something's not working right, and specifically the TSH numbers are weird. So what Synthroid or levothyroxine does is it says, hey, in order to increase the output of T3, which is where we want to get to, we're going to send a whole lot more Clark Kents into that telephone booth, and then we'll have some more Supermen. The problem is that the telephone booth is only so big. We don't have synthetic liver that we add onto it, so the telephone booth is trying to handle all of these new Clark Kents, and it's like, yeah, you eke out a few more Supermen, but what does it do to the liver over time? Now this is where the detoxification becomes very, very, very important, because that's what it does, is it allows the liver to take a rest, to clean itself out. Many, many, many thyroid problems actually have their root in the liver congestion, and mine did. Doesn't mean everybody does, but it means that mine did. And I have a lovely lady who was coming to see me for a couple of years. She had this chronic gallbladder stuff. Like her, she's often be like, oh, I got the ouchies. She did a really good job at taking care of herself. She actually introduced me to a great book called Slim Healthy Mama, which is a great book. It's a fun book. Anyway, so she was like really invested in her self-care, and yet she would have these like twinges. She also did essential oils, so she'd come in and she's like, oh, I did this and this and this, and but she would always have these twinges. Well, okay, why? What is your gallbladder? What does it do? Pardon?
It holds bile and squeezes it out.
Yes, it holds bile and it squeezes it out. It's a little bladder. Back in my day, back at the beginning, before there were camelbacks and stuff, when you went hiking, you had this little bladder that you would take with you, and you'd put water in it, and that's right. So it's one of those little bladders, and it holds the bile. Not too many ways that you can mess that up. here, hold this, give it to me when I need it. It's a pretty simple job, right? And yet, gallbladder surgery is one of the top surgeries that we do today. We remove the gallbladder all the time. So let's look a little bit upstream and let's see what the gallbladder is getting. Well, what organ creates bile? Liver. I love being in these rooms. It's fantastic. People know so much these days. So much information is available on the internet, and it's lovely and fantastic. Okay, so the liver is what creates the bile. If the liver creates the bile and the gallbladder holds the bile, then sometimes the problem has much more to do with the bile than it does to do with the gallbladder. The gallbladder is just holding it, right? Bile can be too thick or it can be too thin. It can be gunky and overly viscous, and then that's going to create gallstones. So if we move back upstream and we take care of the liver and we help it to detoxify, then the bile gets smoother, our bodies feel better, we digest better, and by the way, all of our hormones are made in the gut. If all of our hormones are made in the gut and what's getting to the gut has a higher quality, you got better stuff, better ingredients. Your dinner tastes better if you got fresh food, right? It tastes lousy if you're using 2-week-old leftovers and you're trying to add in whatever spices you can to try to make it just palatable, right? If it's got really good ingredients, it can do a good job. So, all right, back to my lady with the irks, with the little twinges, right? Sometimes they were a little bit more than twinges. So she comes in to see me, and we did our detoxification program. By the way, I recommend doing this once or twice a year if a person is a candidate for it. Now, somebody asked me before this if I did muscle testing, applied kinesiology, and I do. And one of the reasons that I do it is because it allows me to vet academic information. It allows me to vet my ideas through their energy system. I can think you totally need this, but if I don't ask Janet's body, then I don't know what the actual answer is. I might just be flying off the cuff and saying, well, I was just at this training class this weekend. I think everybody on the planet needs this right now. That may or may not be what that person's body needs. So just a quick word of warning. When I first was introduced to the detoxification program that I now used, I myself wasn't a candidate for it. My body wasn't strong enough to go through the detoxification process. And fortunately, I was very, very lucky to be working with a practitioner who was a muscle tester and also an excellent academic. So he knew his medicine very well, and he was wise enough to say to me, because I was very eager, right? I'm getting ready to launch my practice and live my dream, and I really wanted to make it as awesome as possible. And he said, do this support first for 1 month, and then do the detoxification program. And I was actually embarrassed that I wasn't even healthy enough to do a detoxification program. But now I get to do them a couple times a year, and I recommend that for the people as they graduate into this program because it cleans up more and more. So we're all living in 21st century America, and in addition to the chlorine, we also have another halogen that we're exposed to every time you brush your teeth. Fluoride, yes. The deal is that the food for the thyroid is, what's food for the thyroid? What is it? Iodine. Food for the thyroid is iodine. Chlorine and fluoride are similar sizes and shapes to the molecule of iodine. And so the thyroid goes, good enough. You look like food to me. And it takes it and holds on to it. And we have a lot of these things in 21st century America that's around us all the time. So our thyroids have been exposed to this a lot. And the more it's exposed to it, the more it picks up. Even though the thyroid is it's a little small butterfly-shaped gland that's right back here. Even though it's really small, it's only about an inch. Even though I'm doing this, it's really only about an inch big. So it doesn't need much, right? It doesn't take too much to gunk it up. And once it's gunked up, it doesn't really want to let go of its thing. So you have to go through the detoxification process in order to clear that out. Okay, so So I mentioned secret number 1 and I mentioned secret number 2. Some of the problems that people have when they start to do these detoxifications on their own. So indications that you might need to work with a healthcare professional is, for example, if your TPO antibodies are higher, then this means that this is a person that needs to be very, very, very careful with iodine. Because in the autoimmune picture, this person, iodine can actually make their thyroid problems worse. So how do you know when to do what? This is when you need to work with somebody that is skilled at reading lab work and can advise you into the nutrients that will help to heal your thyroid, and whether iodine is going to be awesome and the best thing on the planet for you, or whether it's going to be not your friend. Important to do that kind of work. Okay, so before I get to the third one, oh yes, I had a number of people whose stories I wanted to share with you, and this is one of my favorite ones. You know, the great thing about fixing the gunked upness of the liver, right? Getting the more telephone booths, making more Superman. The great thing about that is that as you clear these toxins out of your body, then you tend to naturally lose weight. And the reason for that is because many, many, many people who are, have a few extra pounds, who are overweight to some degree, their bodies are storing toxins in their fat. And those toxins are endocrine interrupters. It keeps them from being able to lose fat. So they're not, and I often hear stories. In fact, back when I worked at the gym, I had a lady one day who ran in. The gym closed that day. It was like a Saturday, and we closed at 4, and she ran in at 3:15, and she got on that elliptical machine, and she was just working her heart out. And I was like, wow, I'm really impressed by you. That's really cool. And she said, yep, I was at dinner with my family and I realized I wasn't going to make my time, so I was going to go to the gym right now and work out. And I was like, that is some dedication. I mean, you were probably having a good meal, and I don't like my meal time to be interrupted. I was really, really, really impressed. She's like, yep, I know you can't tell it by looking at me, but I just did a marathon a few weeks ago. And I was like, holy schmoly. She's like, yeah, you would have thought that I would have lost some weight, but it hasn't touched it. Same way. And she was quite plump. Okay, a marathon is 26.2 miles. It's a lot. I do triathlons and the running, it's a lot, right? Everybody says, if you want to lose weight, do 2 things. What are they? Exercise and eat right. Yeah, exercise and eat right? So she had the exercise down in spades. She'd been really doing her work. Why didn't it work for her? It didn't work for her because the game was rigged, because the machinery was gunked up, because the drainage systems that would usually flush that crud out of the body were blocked. So even though she was eating right and she was exercising, this is why don't be judgmental about people, because you don't know the whole story. Even though she was eating right and exercising, the valves were closed. She couldn't drop the weight because her body was holding on to toxins. So recently I had a lady that came to see me, and we were working on other things. She never mentioned the weight gain. She had a little bit of extra weight, but that wasn't her primary focus. We were working on other things entirely. As her body flushed toxins, she lost 15 pounds. Not changing her diet at all. Only minor modifications. Decreasing food sensitivities. So when your body gets rid of the crud, then it can, when you bring the toxic offload, you offload the toxins, then it can work the way that it's supposed to. Your bodies have an amazing capacity to heal themselves. And when they're a little overwhelmed, sometimes they just need a little help getting rid of that stuff. Okay, the third secret that I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to now become the most unpopular person in the room by a long shot. But we live in Sarasota, Florida. And last year we had a great big huge hurricane. What was it? Irma. And I gotta tell you, I saw some really interesting things in my clinic after that hurricane. So there was one problem that almost everybody was exposed to during that time, and it's because we had all of this water everywhere, right? So if people were having to rip drywall out, they were having to refurbish houses. What's this one thing? What? Mold. Yes. Mold. So mold was everywhere. And I started seeing some really weird cases. I had a lady who got toxic exposure to this mold, but we couldn't figure out that that's what it was because her toxic exposure levels were actually really low. She had sudden onset loss of taste. Sudden onset loss of taste. So over about a 2-week period, she just slowly started losing her taste more and more. I don't know if you have ever had the displeasure of eating food when there's no taste to it, but it's disgusting. And during this time, I had to watch the light in her eyes just start to shut down because she didn't want to eat. And it hurt my heart. It hurt my heart so much that there's another practitioner that she was working with in another city, and I called them up and I said, look, I'm at my wit's end. Like, we got this problem. I've been doing these things. We got to do something. She is coming to see you tomorrow. And I felt like the airline, you know, like the people on the taxi ramps, they're like, she's coming in, get her, she's coming in. And I have to say they did their best too. They said, oh, well, we know that. We know what the problem is. It's definitely adrenal issues. And I'm like, this lady's been on every adrenal support that you had, that either one of us have for like the past year. I don't think it's just adrenals. I don't think she's having sudden onset loss of taste just for adrenals. They referred her to an ENT who prescribed prednisone for her, which she took once, felt like she was having a heart attack, was terrified to take any more. So I called up the doctor and I said, hi, patient did this, had this experience. All right, if she stops that now. And he's like, oh yeah, I had no idea what to do. I've never seen anything like it. No clue. Just, through what I had. Prednisone is not a thing I advise throwing around, by the way. It's a steroid, which means it inhibits your immune system. It makes you more susceptible to every single possible pathogen on the planet, by the way, including mold. It also affects your cardiovascular system, and it thins your skin, as an FYI, which is why we don't use it in dermatological issues. Okay, so she's got the sudden onset loss of taste. And I thought that I thought I had somebody I could pass the buck to, and I didn't. So she comes back in my clinic, and I realize that it's just getting worse. And so I tried something new that I hadn't tried before. And with a new product line, I'm like, I don't know, we got to do something. And she started getting better. And I honestly burst into tears because I was afraid that she was down a dark well that I was never going to be able to see her from. And it really reinforced the importance of the detoxification process to me, and the tremendous effect that mold and other toxins like this, but we're here in Florida, so let's talk about mold, can have upon the body. So the thing I'm about to say that's going to make me really, really, really unpopular is there is a particular drink that is known to often have mold in it. And this drink is something that most of us drink every single day. Almost no factory tests this product for mold. And by the way, the symptoms of mold exposure are fatigue, low energy, brain fog. If we have fatigue, low energy, and brain fog, what are we going to reach for here in America? Coffee! That's the thing that's going to fix everything. I'm not addicted. I just need my 1 cup in the morning to make me feel fantastic. So here's this really interesting cycle. This is my personal theory. But the symptoms of mold exposure, this fatigue, this die-off, this brain fog, are exactly the same as the tiredness that we feel that we might associate with, I need a cup of coffee. Coffee is known to have mold in it. Many years ago, I had a mold issue in my body, and I was doing a detox at the time. I took 2 sips of a Starbucks Americano, and within 5 minutes, my knee that had this mold issue in it was like lit up and super, 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 super itchy. So, by the way, coffee is an endocrine disruptor, so it's always going to mess with this combination. It's always going to keep weight on you, except in the rare times that's used for sports performance, and that's going to be outside the scope of what I'm talking about. I mention it because I'm a triathlete, so there's this particular thing. But this is what I will share with you, which is a different way of looking at things, and it's that consider trading in your coffee for green tea. to get that mold out of your body so that you're not constantly exposed to it, and parting ways with the endocrine disruptor. Okay, I mentioned that I had a gift for you, and that is this sheet over here. I have, on this Thursday night, I'm doing a special call, which is how to stay sparkly during the holidays, how to avoid fatigue and brain fog and the 7-pound weight gain that happens that is the average that all Americans happen on the holidays. And also, for any of you that would like to sign up for your initial consultation today, then I offer a gift of $50 off at these expos, but only ever at the expo. So if you call me up on Monday, then the appointment is $200. If you sign up today, then it's $50 off, and you just do a $20 deposit to hold the appointment. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to be right here, so you can do signups with me here. If you have any questions, I'll be at the booth afterwards. I know they're going to have another presenter in here shortly. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.